Hey guys, how's it going? Thank you for jumping in and watching my very first live stream on my brand new channel. Doesn't have a name yet. Still, I think I have it called like TBD with Smarsh because that's what you guys know me from Twitter. Um, but I'm hoping that we can kind of like organically think of a name maybe as the weeks go on and I keep doing this. Hopefully you guys can maybe help me come up with a name. Um, so I am doing this on Twitter and on YouTube. So if you see me kind of like peeking around, I'm just trying to see what's going on Twitter. I'll have to try and figure out how I can view those comments at the same time as um, all of you guys that will be possibly chatting on YouTube. That's a lot easier. Just if anyone wants to like ask questions or just, let me make sure that I see their comment. YouTube is a lot easier. Obviously, I have it on Twitter as well because I know some people don't have YouTube, but um, just letting you guys know that little bit of information. So let's just get right into it. We have a game tomorrow. The Patriots have a game tomorrow against the Saints. If you pay attention to Boston media or if you listen to them, you follow them on Twitter, you see anything. I mean, even if you don't pay attention, you see them. You would assume that we're probably playing the Bucks tomorrow because that is apparently what they are pushing. They're kind of skipping over this Saints game, which I understand there's, a lot of hype behind, the Bucks coming to Gillette, and it's Brady's first return to New England since he left for Tampa. So there's a lot of storylines there, and there's a lot of excitement, a lot of hype. I totally understand why, people are already talking about it, but I don't think that the Saints are someone that we should be kind of just like ignoring or, gliding over and just jumping straight to week 4. The Saints are a little bit of an interesting team so far. I wouldn't say that the Patriots aren't, but if you guys have seen, the Saints have played very differently from week 1 to week 2. So it's a little bit difficult to try and figure out what exactly we're going to see against the Patriots and what the Patriots should prepare for. Obviously Bill Belichick will prepare for anything. We know that that's not necessarily a concern, but as people who, like to talk about the game or fans of the Patriots, you kind of are not really sure what to expect. Yeah. Patriots X says, I'm only afraid of Kamara. Yeah. I mean, I think that's my main concern as well, but I'm about to get into like the statistics and whatnot of the last 2 games or the first 2 games, however you want to say it. And Kamara hasn't been that big threat that we're used to seeing. Obviously it's only been 2 games. So you can't really say that this is who the team is or that, Kamara's not going to get any better. Of course he is. But it'll be interesting to see how the Patriots defense can possibly continue that. So let's get into the first game because week 1, they played the Packers at New Orleans. And that was an interesting game on many levels. But we finally know that Jameis Winston is the starting quarterback for the Saints. And they obliterated the Packers. It was a little bit shocking to see that, especially, an Aaron Rodgers run team, but they beat the Packers 38-3. So Jameis had an okay day. He was 14-20 for 148 yards, but he threw for 5 touchdowns, which is insane. Kamara had 20 carries for 83 yards, so not horrible, but usually his numbers are a little bit better than that. And then Tony Jones Jr. was the next right below him. So we have to prepare for that as well with 11 carries for 50 yards. And that was when we also saw one of their tight ends kind of like jump off and make a name for himself in Juwan Johnson. He had 3 receptions for 21 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then Deontay Harris as well had 2 receptions, 72 yards and a touchdown. So, I'm familiar with Juwan Johnson. I got a little bit excited in one of my fantasy leagues. Honestly, I wasn't blessed in getting, Travis Kelce or Hawkinson or even Gronk. So I kind of was dabbling in Juwan Johnson. I had him on my my starting lineup last week, and that was a big mistake. But we shouldn't ignore that. I think that they will still try to utilize him, of course. So we'll have to keep an eye out for that. But also, this was interesting. So Kamara did have 3 receptions for 8 yards and a touchdown. So he, it's not his usual numbers, but he still produced. And then we have Chris Hogan, our, former lacrosse / football player / New England Patriots teammate. He had 1 reception for 10 yards and a touchdown. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to use him a lot. He's going to be very familiar with the Patriots. Not necessarily the new Patriots, as we know. There's Mac Jones and there's a lot of new pieces on the team from when he was there. But, that familiarity is probably going to be very useful for the Saints this week. So I wouldn't be surprised if he is a little bit more involved in this game than he has been. The defense, too, they got 2 sacks, 2 tackles for a loss, 7 quarterback hits, and 2 interceptions, because we know Aaron Rodgers threw 2 interceptions. So not like huge numbers, but those interceptions, obviously, we want to be careful of. Against the Panthers, they lost this one. This is when it was kind of like the complete opposite of what we saw from week 1. So they lost 7-26, which we've seen. The Panthers are on a hot streak right now. They did just lose Christian McCaffrey, but he was in this game. So Jameis was 11 of 22, 111 yards, 2 interceptions, but he did have 3 carries, 19 yards, and a touchdown. So we're going to have to be careful of that. Obviously, that has been a weak spot for the Patriots the last couple of years, is the pass rush and stopping the run. And we know that Jameis is a guy who can run. So that is going to have to be a focus. It's not been amazing in the first 2 games. It wasn't at all what I've expected, really. I think that coming into the season and all of the pieces that they've added, I think I expected a little bit more from the defense, at least early on. I thought that the pass rush and the stopping the run would be a little bit better. But it's been 2 games, so I'm not sitting here being super negative. That's not necessarily in my nature when it comes to the Patriots, but hopefully that won't be a concern tomorrow, because that would just... that, especially with Kamara too, you don't just have a mobile quarterback, you have Alvin Kamara in your backfield. So rushing, this is when Taysom Hill was used too. We'll want to pay attention to that. Depending on how well Jameis does, of course, they have their secret weapon in Taysom Hill, who can basically play apparently every position on a football team. He had 2 carries for 16 yards. He had the most. Kamara basically really had 8. He had 8 carries for 5 yards. So he was completely shut down. He did have 4 receptions for 25 yards, but again, he was completely shut down. I would have to go back and see, but we know that, maybe you don't know, but I know that the Panthers defense has been doing pretty well this season. So it's not really shocking that they were able to shut him down. I'm sure the Patriots defense especially has been watching a lot of tape and trying to figure out how they did that. Because Kamara is probably the biggest threat on the Saints right now. They don't have Michael Thomas, and they have a lot of newer pieces in offensively. So, Kamara is that guy that has been there, and Taysom Hill too. We got to be careful of that wildcat, or just throwing him in for random plays. You never know how they're going to use him. He was a tight end technically, I think, but they don't use him that way. So let's see what else. The defense, it was basically the same thing. 2 sacks, 7 tackles for a loss, 3 quarterback hits, and an interception. So we're going to want to be careful of that. We know that ball security has not been the best for the Patriots the last 2 games. They've had quite a few fumbles, and that is never good. We don't want to be handing over we definitely do not want to give this offense any reason to be able to score. Obviously, that's how it is every week. I feel like when I say these things, it's just funny because it's obvious stuff, but I just, it's relevant to the situation. So let me see. Oh, wait, there's so much going on. Okay, let me see. Ross is in here. Let's see. Patriots X first. He says, for some reason, I feel like the Saints D will force the Patriots to pass. Yeah, I think that especially after what we've seen from the first 2 weeks from the Patriots, I'm guessing that most defenses are going to assume they're going to run the ball a lot. Obviously, they have a lot of faith in Damian Harris, and he's been doing great so far. But they were also utilizing James White quite a bit last week. And then, of course, they have J.J. Taylor, which he hasn't really been used. Ramondre Stevenson, we're still not sure if he's going to be put back in. They benched him last week. So I would think that they are very well prepared to stop the run. And I think that Matt can do it. I think that there's probably a little bit of rookie nerves if you've paid attention to his press conferences and even Josh McDaniels. I believe it was after this last game. I think a lot of people were concerned that he wasn't throwing downfield enough, and a lot of people were assuming that it might have just been bad play calling, which is possible. We hold that gripe over Josh McDaniels' head, because for a lot of times it's true. It's the play calling that's just like making you scratch your head. But they were very adamant to say that that was not the case, and so it might be some rookie nerves, something that we weren't thinking was going to happen, but it did. They do have the deep field threat in Nelson Aguilar. And as we've seen, of course, he was open and Mac didn't see him. So I wouldn't be surprised, if maybe the Patriots do come out and maybe they're going to try to pass a little bit more. And hopefully that goes well. I would like to see it. I assumed that this year was going to be a run heavy team anyway, especially with assuming that at the time that Cam was going to be the starter. So it's possible that that is what their comfort is this year. So let's see what Ross said. McHomer, thoughts on the lack of use of the tight end core? Are they more beat up than advertised? I don't know. I know that they both got banged up a little bit in preseason, which is never good. Hunter Henry, I'm just like, that was one of the biggest concerns, I think, for anybody when the Patriots signed him, was just his injury history, because it just seems like he's never really healthy for an extended period of time. So it is a little bit concerning. I think that I don't know. Like it kind of makes you wonder, is it the play calling? Like, have we just not had tight ends for such a long time, like reliable tight ends, that like McDaniels just doesn't really know how to incorporate them? I don't know, because they looked pretty good in preseason. There were some really great catches by both tight ends and Jonnu and Henry. So it's a little bit concerning. I would like to see them a bit more involved. They definitely needed the blocking from them. So that's fine, but you don't sign these guys to just have them block. Like, you need to be incorporating them a bit more. And maybe as the weeks go on, and Mac gets a little bit more comfortable in the offense, maybe they'll be able to incorporate him more, or both of them more. I'm not sure, but it would be really great to use them this week, because the Saints do have a little bit more of a tricky defense. So Patriots X says Patriots run D always scares me. Yeah, I think that it'll get better as the weeks go on. But it's still early, and Belichick has said himself, like the first month of the regular season is kind of almost like an extension of preseason. You kind of don't have your team doesn't have their identity yet. So let's just hope that the defense is just kind of like has their training wheels on right now, and in a couple weeks we'll kind of see more of what they're completely capable of. Will Zulu says, make or break time for our wide receiver core to show up. These guys aren't getting the separation, but again, coaches haven't let Mac throw long too much. Yeah, and that's the thing, is like what I was saying a little bit a couple minutes ago was it's kind of hard to say what it is, because they seem to be very confident in Mac's ability. I mean, McDaniels was just saying that earlier this week. So I wonder what it is, if it's Mac's confidence or if it's their confidence in his ability to do so, and why they're a little bit reluctant. But the same thing kind of happened last year with Cam. They weren't really letting Cam throw very deep either, and Cam was actually more accurate the further downfield he threw than his short passes. So it might just be a play calling thing. And of course, Mac in general, but especially as a rookie, he's not going to call out his offensive coordinator and say like, oh, the play calling sucks and they're not letting me do this. Like, he's not going to say that. So I don't know that we're ever really going to know, but hopefully we'll see a little bit more of that. And Joe is here, Kinkado21. Thanks for joining. I love that some of my Dear Pats Nation guys have followed me here, so I really appreciate it. Thank you guys. Joe says, adding to Ross's comments, how well do you think the new guys, including the tight ends, know the playbook system? Yeah, and I think that's something that we need to kind of we need to recognize. It is great that they were all signed very early for the most part in free agency, so they've had more time to look at the playbook and whatnot. You know, it's not another Cam situation where they signed him at the end of June or July, and you know, the Patriots playbook is historically difficult to learn. So I think that might be part of it, but I think it's going to be somewhat of a McDaniels thing, I feel like, because we're not seeing even Mac's full potential. And again, I have to reiterate, like, it's only week 3. So I'm not saying like this is how it's going to be for the rest of the season, but it is worth noting right now. I wouldn't be surprised if that is, you know, part of it. It's completely possible, but you know, they've gone through camp and they looked pretty good in preseason for the most part. So I don't know how much emphasis we should really put on it. I don't know. I think the next few weeks for sure are going to be very telling, and maybe that'll kind of like help us get a better understanding, and maybe we'll be able to answer this question. Okay, so before I get carried away with all your comments, and I appreciate you guys being so interactive, I really do. I was worried that no one was going to leave me any comments. So let's get into what the Patriots have done the first 2 weeks. So we already went over the Saints. So of course we know the Patriots opening game was against the Dolphins, and they lost by 1 point, which was heartbreaking. It was 17-16. Mac Jones had a pretty good day, though, 29 of 39 for 281 yards and 1 touchdown. Damian Harris made his presence known very early on in the season with 23 carries for 100 yards. James White had 4 carries for 12 yards, but he was also involved in the receiving game, which we love to see. He had 6 receptions for 49 yards. This was a game, too, where I felt like Aguilar was very involved. He had 5 receptions for 72 yards and a touchdown. And I was really excited because I know that Aguilar has, you know, the meme, and I don't think that people were super excited about his signing. And some people still believe, you know, that he was overpaid or he wasn't the guy that they wanted to sign, which I understand. But I do think that he was an asset. He's an asset to the team. And so this game really excited me. I thought that this might be the type of production that we would be seeing more from him. That isn't what we saw in the second game, but we'll get into that in a second. But I think the potential is there, and I do like him as a deep threat. And we saw that in last week's game. He was open and Mac missed him. But that's okay. We also had Jacoby Myers, 6 receptions for 44 yards. Jonnu Smith was involved in this game too with 5 receptions for 42 yards, as well as Hunter Henry for 3 receptions for 31 yards. But this game, they did have 4 fumbles, which is a huge no-no in general, but especially when you're on the Patriots. I mean, this is what ended up getting Ramondre Stevenson benched, it seems. So Damian Harris, as we know, he fumbled. So did Stevenson, Jonnu, and Mac. They all fumbled. So that is going to be a point of emphasis this entire season. They had some fumbling issues last year, and definitely do not want that trickling into this year. Hopefully, because it's early on in the season, they can get that out of the way. You know, get those fumbles out of the way early on. Don't bring them into later in the season when games are becoming more and more difficult and more important. So let's see. Yeah, the defense too did okay. 2 sacks, 7 tackles for a loss, 4 quarterback hits, and 1 interception by Jonathan Jones. Certainly not as great as the game defensively against the Jets. But they did beat the Jets 25-6, which was awesome. Mac Jones was 22 of 30, 186 yards. Damian Harris, 16 carries, 62 yards, and 1 touchdown, which, Mac pushed him over that line. And I loved to see that. That was so awesome. I posted a picture of that on my Twitter, actually. James White, we love to see it as well. 5 carries, 20 yards, and a touchdown. He also had 6 receptions for 45 yards. Hunter Henry, 2 receptions, 42 yards. Jacoby Myers, still about the same, 4 receptions for 38 yards. Defensively, this is the type of game that we want to see continue on this season. I think that we've all hyped up the defense this year. And this was the type of stuff that you are hoping is going to continue. This is what I feel like a lot of us were expecting to see. They had 4 sacks, 6 tackles for a loss, 7 quarterback hits, and 4 interceptions, 2 from JC Jackson, 1 from McCourty, and 1 from Adrian Phillips. So that was awesome. And JC Jackson making a name for himself, certainly very early on in the season. We know that he is signed to a 1-year deal for the last year. So with Gilmore out and unsure if he's coming back this season, at least not until after week 6, I believe. It's really good to see JC Jackson have this type of production already. I'm someone who wasn't 100% sure about how he would do as the number 1 corner. And I'm still a little bit unsure, but seeing this was really good to see, obviously. He had the most interceptions last year as well, and he's starting off early. So, and then of course, Devin McCourty, Adrian Phillips. I love the Adrian Phillips signing. So this was really cool to see him do that. And I don't know if you guys saw the video of Devin McCourty. I think it was after the game, and there were so many Patriots fans there just chanting Devin, Devin. And it's like, dude, that was pretty cool because they were in New York. And it's always good to get such a good win against a divisional opponent. But the Jets are the Jets. They're a newer team. They're a young team with a new coach, a rookie quarterback. So you can hand it to them for that, I guess, but definitely pretty awesome to beat them. But this is where I feel like leaves us with some questions, right? Like, as I said earlier, what Saints team are we going to see tomorrow? Are we going to see the dominant type of performance that we saw from week 1? Or was that just because of, the Packers were just not playing up to par? Is it because their defense isn't very good? Or is it because slightly it looked like Aaron Rodgers didn't really care? If we're being honest. Obviously hit a bounce back game last week, killed it. Thank you to my fantasy team, Rodgers, for doing that on my bench, because I benched you after that week 1 performance. But what are we going to see from the Saints? And who's to blame for such a difference? Like, is it that the Panthers are just that good and that was why they just couldn't handle it? Is it because the Packers were just not prepared? I don't know. I think that maybe some people are not taking the Saints as serious because Drew Brees is gone. And, Michael Thomas is gone and whatnot, but hard to say. And then a big emphasis too would be, how are the Patriots going to solve their red zone issues? Because as we've seen over the last 2 weeks, they have not been great in the red zone. They're not able to finish drives and score. Thank goodness they have Nick Folk, because Quinn Nordin or Nordine, someone tell me in the comments how it is pronounced. I've heard both, but he was put on IR, I believe. So he'll be gone for at least 3 weeks. So we have Nick Folk. So at least we have that type of reliability and at kicker to help us put points on the board. But as great as it is to get field goals, we need to get, the touchdowns. We need to end drives with touchdowns. We're not going to win games with just field goals. That's just not going to happen. So another question, are we going to see deeper throws from Mac? What is the play calling going to be like? We kind of touched on this a little bit earlier when I believe it was Patriot X said that he wonders if the Saints are going to end up forcing them to throw the ball more. So if that's the case, I wonder if that's what they've been practicing for this week. Maybe because it was such a hyped up conversation this week after the Jets game about Mac not throwing deep or long. It'll be interesting to see if they end up including a bit more of that. And let's see, as far as Kamara goes too, are we concerned about Kamara? I'm still a little bit worried, honestly. I'm not expecting him to have a game like he did last week where it was, 5 yards did I say? Rushing, 8 carries for 5 yards. He had 4 receptions for 25 yards. I'm not anticipating that type of low production from him. I think once they start getting a little bit more comfortable, they're probably going to involve him a bit more. So I'm not expecting that. I'm hopeful that the run defense will be a lot better this week. I forget about the total numbers against the Jets. Let's see. I didn't write down the Jets numbers. I should have done that. But I think they had like 150 or some odd yards rushing last week. So certainly not ideal, and not ideal when you're going up against a team that has a back like Kamara. We want to be able to shut him down pretty quickly and maybe have Jameis throw the ball. We know that he can be an interception machine. Patriots X says Jameis is still Jameis, LASIK or not. Yeah, it's still hard to say if the LASIK has paid off or not. It looked like it in the first game, that was the best money he ever spent. He didn't throw a ton of interceptions last week, but definitely not the same performance that he had week 1. So you got to prepare for everything, I guess, with him. And will we see another game with several interceptions from our defense, from our secondary? Are we going to have another game of, JC Jackson pulling in too? Or are we going to see the defense take advantage of those opportunities? Because Zach Wilson was just throwing them. Like, it's almost like he thought he was seeing ghosts, as we like to say, right? He was throwing them to the Patriots as if the Patriots were Jets players. So I'm assuming that Jameis is not going to be doing that. We're not going to be handed that many. But if that does happen, that goes back to the red zone issues. We need to make sure that the Patriots are finishing their drives. That's going to be, I think, something that we're going to focus on for sure as fans. It's not great to see that so far. Hopefully that's something that they can work on. And I think as time goes on, Mac will get better. I think that we just need to remember, and I tweeted about this as well. We need to remember that Mac is still a rookie, despite all of the great things that, teammates and coaches and whatnot are saying about him, and that he worked with Saban in college. Like, we have to remember that he's still like a little baby in this league. So he's going to make mistakes, and it's going to maybe take him a little bit before he's completely comfortable in doing things that he's probably capable of. But just we haven't seen it yet. So Patriot X says Zach was legit forcing it. Yeah, no, he was trying. I mean, that's the thing too, like, he's a rookie too. So you kind of have to give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt there. Cause I really don't like when people are already saying, all these negative things about Mac. And it's like, you guys have to remember he's still a rookie. There's a lot of growing left to do. So I don't think that we need to harp on any of this too much. If this is something like, if this is a pattern with something like with Zach Wilson, then yeah, there's time to be concerned for sure. Cab's family says making the Saints one-dimensional is the way the Pats play, but if we make them focus on stopping the run, the pass plays can kill us. Yeah, for sure. There needs to be a balance. And I think they're going to have to do that balance when you have Kamara, because Kamara is also not a back that's one-dimensional either, right? Like, he's like James White. They have him anywhere and he's open. He gets these big plays, and we can't just focus on stopping him in the run game when they can very easily throw to him, and it would be just as devastating of a play as it would be had he just run. So I think there are definitely a lot of question marks for this Saints team and how the defense should plan, to it. But it's so early on; it's like so hard to to say what either team is going to do. Of course, we're a little bit biased because we are, Patriots fans, but it's I don't know. It's just so early on in the season. There's still just so many more questions that we have that it's just really difficult to pinpoint things. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Cabs family again. Do you think the Pats tried the Josh Gordon reunion? As a Josh Gordon fan, I would love to see that. However, I'm going to go with no. They could probably bring him in for super cheap. And of course, we know the Pats do not have a lot of cap space right now. And Belichick doesn't love to pay top dollar for anybody. So I don't think that would be an issue. I think more of the issue is that they've now had him on the team 2 times, and both times they ended up having to release him because of issues, with him and his off-field things. So I don't know that Belichick would want to risk it a third time. I don't know that they necessarily need him, but I would like it. I like Josh Gordon. It was really unfortunate, I feel like, when it ended up happening a second time, but we'll see. I don't anticipate it happening. What do you guys think? Joe said Max sounds like Peter Brady on the podium. He really does sound like Peter Brady, but he also kind of sounds like Tom Brady, for being honest. That was something that I've noticed, like, being coached by Saban, it's like it turned him into a mini Brady. Like, he sounds like Patriots Brady up there from 2 years ago, which is crazy. And I love it. I mean, of course, I like to see their personalities a little bit more, but I like how serious he takes this and his opportunity, and him taking accountability even for things that aren't necessarily his fault. I just like to see it. I know that some people might think it's boring, but I appreciate it. Patriot X says all the negative criticism about Mac Jones are coming from the Patriot haters. True, but the thing that's bizarre is that it's a lot of Boston media too. That is something that I feel like is super annoying, super frustrating about Boston media, sports coverage at least, is like, you would think that we were a sports city that hasn't done anything in like 100 years with how they talk about the teams here. I mean, I understand being disappointed with some of the way that things have happened to the team, any of the teams out of here the last few years. But I mean, this is, when it comes to Mac, he's a rookie quarterback. Like, you can't be expecting him to step into, the same routine of Tom Brady. He's not Tom Brady. And the people who are hating on Mac too, ironically, are ones who didn't want Cam around. And Cam is gone, and that they're still complaining. So I think I've always said that I just feel like they're kind of they want to just be miserable. That's kind of like how it comes off. So and if you guys want that type of talk, then I'm not the one to watch. Ross says, I trust our secondary over their receiving core. Will need to keep spies on Kamara the whole game. For sure. I think especially because he wasn't as productive last week, they're going to be using him more. I think that's going to be their comfort zone. Of course it is, right? Like, the Patriots are going to do that with Damian Harris if they can. But yeah, no, they're going to have to keep watch on him. They're going to have to double cover him and just watch him the entire game, because he is a scary dude on that offense. Like, from someone, especially if I can't see Saints games, I have had him on my fantasy teams, and I know how scary he can be and how he can get 40 fantasy points. What was that game? He got like four or five touchdowns in one game. It was like so easy for them. So I don't want to see that. Let's see. Oh, and Ross also said this. BB is known for negating a team's best player. If we stop Kamara on the ground, I won't be worried about the passing game. Yeah, I think I wouldn't be surprised if Kamara shut down for the most part. Like you said, Belichick is very, very well known for shutting down whoever their top target is. So if that were to happen, I am a little bit worried just because of what we saw from the guys in week 1, like Juwan Johnson. It was like, who is Juwan Johnson? Like, no offense to him, but like, who heard of him before that game? So that type of thing just makes me a little bit nervous. And of course, he's a tight end, which makes that guy a little bit more difficult to take down. So, Cavs family says, who has the bigger contribution this week, Jonnu or Hunter Henry? I'm going to say Jonnu. I feel like I've really liked what I've seen from Jonnu so far. Nothing against Hunter Henry. I like what he's done too. I think he just makes me a little bit nervous just because of his injury history. And then, he's already tweaked a few things since he's been in a Patriots uniform. So I do like, I'm going to say I like Jonnu for sure. Joe says Boston media makes money off of the negative media because the fan base feeds off the drama and negativity. Exactly. It is very disappointing. I wouldn't consider myself someone in the media. Of course I'm not. But it's a big reason why I've tried to get involved, even in sports Twitter, like with Patriots and whatnot, because it's just very frustrating to be coming from a city and you're trying to look at news and for your teams, and it's like it's very difficult to find anything that's not so negative and not so biased. It is very hard to just see or read anything that just tells you straight facts. Like that's what I want to see. And then for me, I try to be super optimistic, and sometimes it's a little delusional. But that's just how I am as a sports fan. I always have been. I just always try to be as optimistic and as positive as I possibly can. So, I try to, I guess, counteract all of that negativity that Boston media does, because it is like Ross said, toxic. It's toxic, and the fact that our fans too, of the team contribute a lot to that toxicity is unfortunate as well. Let's see. Ross also says, McHomer, why is anyone listening to Guerrero? Didn't that guy try to sell concussion water? Why are we listening to crackpot crazy trainers of Brady? Very annoying. Yeah, I think that I think I was seeing a lot more backlash towards Guerrero than I think I anticipated seeing. I think that a lot of people kind of treated him as untouchable because, Brady swears by him, and whatever they're doing with Brady is clearly working. Dude's going to, he just turned 44. So, the fact that he's still playing at such a high level at 44, clearly something going on with Guerrero. They are doing something great for him and it's working. But yeah, I mean, the fact that he's tried to say that he can, cure these diseases or whatnot. Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that's the most disappointing is that you have to wonder if this is all of their thoughts, right? Like, of course, Brady Sr. is going to come out and he's going to speak negatively, I guess, about the team that, quote, gave up on his son. And Guerrero's going to have some negative feelings as well. But it makes you wonder if any of that is coming from Brady himself too, which I think is really disappointing, because I would really like to think that even though he's acting completely different, I think we all know that. You can kind of see that, like, he's become Tampa Top. I would like to believe that he would still be respectful if possible and not contribute to any of this negativity that's being brought to the Patriots, and that he doesn't have this negative mindset towards the team. And so I would like to believe that it's just their personal thoughts and that none of it's coming from Tom himself. Because that would just be really sad. Like, I was just thinking recently too about, do you guys think this? I kind of wanted to tweet about this, but I'll ask you guys here. Do you think Brady will retire a Patriot? I kind of feel like as the weeks go on, as time goes on, it's like I kind of am not sure if he will. I believe that Kraft, it was rumored, I don't know if Kraft said it himself, but that when they had their conversation about Tom leaving, that that he would retire a Patriot. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was a conversation that did happen and maybe Tom agreed to it. But I just feel like he's just loving Tampa so much, and that's great. He's doing great. He just won a Super Bowl there. But I would really love for him to still retire a Patriot, and I'd be so disappointed if he didn't. But I really like to see what you guys say. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Joe said quarterback film room and former Pats quarterback told Phil Perry after watching the game film that Mac played smarter than people realize when it comes to his decision making, especially concerning the deep ball. Yeah. And that's why I said for some people, it's like, it's easy to make snap judgments when you're watching the game, especially it depends on who the commentators are for the game as well, because the commentators are very biased. And even though Brady's not on the team, there are a lot more commentators that dislike the Patriots in general than there are ones that don't care, and they will speak positively. But I think unless you watch the game again or you're a football expert, you've played football, whatnot, and you replay it, it's difficult to see how a game is truly played in real time. So I'm glad to see this. I do think that he's playing a little bit better and smarter, especially, than people are giving him credit for. And then, of course, he's a rookie, as I've said 1,000,001 times. So Joe also says it depends on how long he plays for the Buccaneers. I know, and I feel like if he were to win like another Super Bowl, that it might become a little bit more difficult for him to go and retire as a Patriot. But man, would that bum me out? That would really bum me out. Cavs family says Brady's quote, "I'll retire when I suck." With this team he has, might not be a while. Yeah. It just would bum me out, man. I was so heartbroken when Brady left. So it'd be really disappointing to see if he kind of just abandoned New England in general, like I know that he doesn't like owe the fans anything necessarily, but I feel like it would just kind of I don't know, kind of like feel better about him leaving, I guess. I don't know how to explain it. Maybe I'm just like a weirdo, but Patriot X says Rams are winning tomorrow. I saw that. I don't know if it was on NFL Network or ESPN where they were picking the games. I believe they all picked the Rams, which I was a little bit surprised about, but they have Aaron Donald. Cooper Kupp is like Superman this year. So I wouldn't be surprised. The Bucs defense has been a little bit iffy. It seems like last week they clicked, and of course they have a crazy amount of offensive weapons, but I don't think that Antonio Brown will be playing tomorrow. So that's a hit for the Bucs. But unless you guys have some more questions, I might have to end this for now. But I appreciate you guys being so interactive with me on my very first stream. Thank you guys. I really appreciate it. And hopefully I'm going to try and figure out like a schedule or something so that you guys will know every time that I am here. So I'm going to try and figure that out. I also am going to be trying to figure out things like I have a green screen, so I need to figure that out. All of this will be figured out. But thank you guys for watching, for hanging out with me, asking questions, all of that. I will see you guys next time. Have a good day.